Effects of Domestic Violence on Parenting and Its Solutions, presented by Katherine Chavez, Arizona State University. The objective of this presentation will review how domestic violence affects parenting and how to help support parents. Domestic violence programs provide support for mothers experiencing domestic violence, and early childhood home visiting programs supports parenting. Most home visiting programs service families from prenatal to the age of 3. I'm aware that domestic violence also affects men, but for today's presentation, the focus will be on mothers. First, I would like to share the definition of domestic violence taken directly from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Domestic violence is the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and/or other abusive behaviors as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, threats, and emotional psychological abuse. The frequency and severity of domestic violence varies dramatically. Parenting is defined as the process of promoting and supporting the physical, emotional, social, and cognitive development of a child from infancy to adulthood by caregiving, providing nurturance, and protection of the child. This presentation is intended for early childhood home visitors and domestic violence advocates. Early child home visiting programs and domestic violence programs have a very important role in helping to address mothers experiencing domestic violence. These two programs have direct access to mothers and children and also can gain the trust for mothers to feel safe. These two programs combined have the ability to fill gaps in order to support families. The impact of domestic violence exposure not only lies in the safety and health effects of the women and children, but goes beyond the issue to cause a major effect on the parenting skills and child rearing practices, which can diminish or become inappropriate. The current approach requires intentional improvement since domestic violence programs focus on the safety and can sometimes overlook the issues affecting parenting through domestic violence. The primary recommendation for the issue is that domestic violence organizations establish a strong partnership with early childhood home visiting programs as a way to enroll the women in home visiting services to receive further education and support in parenting when experiencing domestic violence. The double jeopardy of exposure to domestic violence is that young children are robbed of steady and predictable parenting. The emotional unavailability of parents can lead to issues affecting parenting skills that can cause insecurities to the young child. Mothers often understand the feelings behind their child's behavior and respond in a way that matches their child. When a mother is not emotionally available for the child, responding empathically to the child's needs is difficult, thus restricting the ebb and flow of emotional availability involving mutual feedback. For example, a child smiles and the parent does not respond emotionally. The child will eventually learn that she will not receive a positive response when she smiles to mom. Therefore, she will not continue to try and not reach out to her mother. Diminished parenting skills is letting children make the rules, not setting boundaries, not paying attention to the child, afraid to discipline, feeling stressed and tired. Children thrive on routines and boundaries. Family time helps build relationships with one another through time together, especially in common routines. When family members are dealing with a crisis, some aspect of normalcy tend to increase harmony and balance. Domestic violence can have a severe negative impact on parenting, which can cause a severe impact on the parent-child relationship. The parent-child relationship is a major influence on a child's development. Developmental outcomes are not a function of the individual child or the child's experiences separately. Rather, the interaction of child and environment determines the outcome. Therefore, a difficult home environment does not necessarily mean that your child will be unhealthy. However, in the early childhood field, the parent-child relationship is key to a child's success. Parenting is personal, subjective, and can be difficult, especially if there's a history of violence or current violence. The most common characteristic of domestic violence is that parents experience significant levels of stress, which affects their availability for their children. Victims of violence have difficulties regulating strong emotions, and because they are often anxious, depressed, or suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, they can perceive their children's age-appropriate behaviors as disrespectful or unloving and disregard the child. Victimization can sometimes also negatively influence a mother's parenting skills that can cause the child to feel insecure and is usually exhibited in the child's behavior, which can cause more stress for the mother. Domestic violence is a risk factor to the development of healthy parenting. Being a parent is an emotionally demanding responsibility. In the ordinary, everyday stresses of life, the demands of being a parent can create a relentless challenge to a mother's nurturing capacity and sense of personal competence as a parent. In some instances, the difficulty for parents is reaching out for help, which adds to the stress. The reduction of and management of stress is viewed as a significant factor in creating a nurturing family. Victimization can erode a woman's parenting. Her inability to nurture her children. She may focus on safety, survival, and meeting the abuser's needs more than nurturing her children. Her mental and physical health. She may suffer mental illness, drug or alcohol abuse, or poor physical health triggered by the abuse. Low functioning. Her functioning as a parent is undermined by the abuser's interference, by the impact of his degrading behavior, and by the resulting erosion of her authority with the children. Child neglect. Domestic violence-induced stress may result in child neglect or maltreatment. Research shows a woman's parenting often improves once she and her child are safe. Denial. Mothers may deny the extent of the effects of domestic violence on their children. She may not understand the impact of lack of parenting can have on a child. A mother's shame and guilt about the abuse may inhibit her communication with her children, and we all know the importance of communicating to a child, especially during language development. The abuser's dominance prevents a mother from parenting as she chooses or negotiating parenting with him. Women have experienced domestic violence since the Stone Age era. However, in the last 10 years, one of the important developments in the field of domestic violence research on how exposure to violence affects young children. In the United States, about 15.5 million children come from households in which there was at least one occurrence of partner violence in the previous year. with 60% of the children being less than 6 years old. Research found that there was a possibility of a compromised relationship between the children and their parents, which results from the mother being preoccupied, depressed, afraid, and highly anxious. Advocates of the issue share that they have not seen a reduction in domestic violence, but they do see an increase in women asking for help. Over the last 2 decades, there has been an increase in the number of laws enforced to protect domestic violence victims. However, the recent state and federal cuts mean that there is less funding for domestic violence programs in the country. Mothers who experience domestic violence were more likely to have maternal depressive systems and report harsher parenting. Diminished parenting is associated with several negative outcomes for children, including behavior problems, aggression, and poor social interaction. Because of the parents' guilt or sense of hopelessness, they doubt their ability to help their children, or they underestimate the effectiveness of the relationship with their children. When mothers experiencing domestic violence do not have the parenting support needed, there is a significant likelihood of children developing trauma without the support of their mothers. The trauma can further lead to other health-related issues such as mental health concerns and poor brain development for the young. Evidence shows that babies, toddlers, and older children do not forget traumatic events. Children may have difficulty making friends and trusting people because they have difficulty opening up, and it is easier to push someone away. Every year, domestic violence statistics are rising, and research shows children can develop post-traumatic stress disorder. The trauma can lead to other health problems, mental health problems, and affect brain development for younger children. Overall, existing studies show that on an average, children exposed to diminished parenting show more difficulties than those children not exposed. However, the parent's ability to parent under stressful circumstances is a protective factor. Protective factors are conditions or attributes such as skills, strengths, resources, supports, or coping strategies in individuals, families, communities, or the larger society that help people deal more effectively with stressful events and mitigate or eliminate risks in families and communities. Children's emotional recovery from trauma, exposure to DV, depends on the quality of their relationship with the non-abusive parent than any other single factor. Some mothers who face toxic stress may increase nurturing and protection. This relationship can be a factor in creating resilience and buffers the impact of stress. Protective factors can eliminate risks in families. Parental resilience is the ability to cope with the stress and feel grounded, especially during a crisis. Having social connections by having a social network of friends and family to lean on so parents never feel they are alone. Knowledge of parenting and child development. If a parent knows and understands the best way to support the child's development through providing a routine, setting healthy boundaries, and nurturing. Concrete support in times of need. Families need to meet their own basic needs and can do this if they are aware of community services. Social emotional competence of children provides the space for children to express their emotions, problem solve, and have healthy relationships with adults. In our current times, do you think these protective factors can help children feel safe? Developing strong partnerships between early childhood home visiting programs and domestic violence programs. Research shows parenting programs are believed to help decrease parental risk factors that can lead to child neglect, parental depression, lower parental stress, and increase the parent's knowledge around child development. Shortage of resources is one of the issues affecting the current approaches highlighted, with most communities not having domestic shelters that can partner with the early childhood home visitation services and vice versa. Home visiting services can improve the parent-child relationship by providing parenting, education, and emotional support. However, for the communities that have domestic shelters, developing collaborations with early childhood home visitation programs can become hard as it takes time to develop a working relationship. Cross-training for each program to learn about each other's services and how to support families collaboratively. Also, trainings that focus on the parent-child relationship, such as attachment, the ACE study, and trauma-informed care and practice. Trauma-informed practice is a way for providers to understand and learn positive ways to help someone who has survived a trauma. The domestic violence program can train home visitors how to screen for domestic violence and provide referrals to the local domestic violence programs and national hotlines. Domestic violence programs can train the home visitors on how to create a safety plan with families. Creating a memorandum of understanding, also known as a MOU, for the two programs to collaborate on case management, to talk about how they'll support families, and especially how they can support each other. The MOU will indicate how to refer families to each other, how the programs will work together, and how they will support families together. When a family leaves the shelter, the domestic violence advocate, the home visitor, and the mother can have a meeting for a warm handoff for the mother to understand and ask any questions about home visiting services and to actually enroll in the home visiting services. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available to help victims and survivors of domestic violence. The hotline is a 24-hour service. Domestic violence and abuse are against the law. Every person deserves to be safe, and one thing we can do to support victims and survivors is to believe and listen to them. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. Let's all work together to provide support and safety for women and children facing domestic violence. Thank you for your time in listening to my presentation.